Back to basics then, Jonathan. How did we get into this mess?
It stretches back perhaps 50 or 80 years, complete mismanagement of the economy by successive governments, Labour and Conservative. Then we got to the 1980s and Margaret Thatcher allowed banks basically to lend whatever they wanted to lend. However, on the other side, she reformed the trade unions, which was very positive. And then in the Labour period, 97 to 2010, we had the biggest debt explosion in the history of the world. Do you know, here's an interesting statistic. It took 400 years of recorded economic history until 1997, when Blair took office, for household debt to get to £500 billion. 7 years later, it doubled. So
that is an amazing statistic, isn't it?
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
Jonathan, you know, at the risk of sort of going back into the depths of economic history, you know, it was Keynes, wasn't it? John Maynard Keynes, who had the insight in the midst of the Great Depression to say, you know, we can actually borrow money, and if we borrow money and use that to invest, for example, in house building and roads building, then we keep people employed, we keep them in work, they then contribute to the economy, and we keep the wheels of the economy going. Are you suggesting that kind of thinking, which sort of helped in the immediate aftermath of the Great Depression, has actually been adopted now by successive governments and just taken to such an extreme that we've got ourselves into a ridiculous, huge debt crisis that's going to take years to get out of?
Adrian, political leaders take from economists and serious thinkers the bits that they want to take. Whether it's Conservative or Labour, there is no significant difference. They have all basically said we must borrow and spend. George Osborne is now spending more than Ed Balls wanted to spend, borrow and spend. That's quite an achievement. The problem with John Maynard Keynes is that he believed in people's altruism, that ultimately everyone would work for society. The reality is, as we well know, we just have to watch the soap operas on television, practically everyone is selfish. We ultimately work for ourselves. We do things for ourselves. There's a relatively small number of people who are actually, as Keynes said, altruistic. So on that basis, there are major flaws in Keynes' thinking. Ultimately, John Maynard Keynes would basically say, what we should do is hire 100 people, dig a big hole, then hire another 100 people, fill it in, and then get back the first 100 people and dig it up. Ultimately, that system doesn't work. What we have right now is an economy which has more debt than any other country on the planet, when you take into account government debt, household debt, and company debt. And on top of that, 80% of the planet is in recession, whether it's China or the EU, or of course the UK or the United States. 80% is in recession. So, Adrian, your listeners need to get this. If 4/5 of the planet is in recession and we are the most indebted nation on earth, paying a lot of interest on our borrowings, there is no way on earth that any government can get us out of this without severe pain. And I just wish they'd stop printing money, let the banks go bust, let us take an immediate hit for a couple of years, and then we can start moving. What they're actually doing is keeping us in depression for 20 or 30 years.
So you think go cold turkey, let the banks which have failed go. That will hit some investors, it would damage confidence, but you believe in the long run it would serve the interests of the economy and the people listening to this programme better than sustaining banks by printing money through quantitative easing.
The politicians need to take the hard decisions. The problem is they're politicians and they won't do it. And yes, your listeners need to accept the hard reality that either we stick with Plan A, which is no growth for 20 or 30 years. I hasten to tell you, we haven't had any growth for 6 years already. Or we take a couple of years of, no doubt, very difficult times, but then we can get growth for a generation.